on this episode of AK Podcast.
There's nobody in the world that is making the quality beef that we are making right now. And it's actually getting better, one, because of genetics, but two, just because of days on feed. The price of these cattle are so high that to actually make it pencil out, they have to be 200 pounds bigger than they did a few years ago. So instead of that average being, a 1,350, 1,400 pound steer, now these cattle have to be 1,600, 1,650 to make money.
You know you're a hay nerd when you walk into a hay barn and you just love that smell.
Doggone it, I gotta put more corn in. I'm gonna have to add some soybean meal. Wow, did that cost you a lot of money?
Put yourself in a crowded elevator and the elevator stops because, I don't know, the building's on fire.
I really like to ask them what's important to them.
We're here for the cow. She's giving us all the profits we need to maintain these facilities and buildings and employees. Man, let's take care of her.
Roadway, I would call it more as a roundabout. And it's kind of like a weird analogy where we're, as farmers, farming and raising these livestock up, and then themselves are kind of have their own, herd of microbes in their gut that they're raising up.
I have two great passions in my life. The one is people, and the second is cows. And I want to get the best out of them.
Hello, and welcome to AK Podcast, where we explore science and nutrition behind livestock care and management with the best and the brightest in the business. I'm your host, Trevor Radcliff, part of the sales team here at Agri-King, and with me today is the Director of Field Services and a member of the sales management team, Mr. Mike Donaldson. Mike, how you doing, buddy?
Having a great day, Chris. How's your day going?
It's wonderful. It's getting to be summer, so we're having a good time. Hey, Mike, who's with us today, and what are we talking about?
Well, today we're going to dive back into the world of beef. We've got one of Agri-King's leading beef on-farm nutrition consultants with us, Trevor Radcliff. I'm going to let Trevor give you a little bit of an introduction, as much of his journey through life in Agri-King as he chooses, and then we'll get down to the hard questions. Thanks for being with us today, Trevor.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
So tell us a little bit about your background, what's got you to where you are.
So I'm from Kentucky, and I kind of grew up in the beef world. Grew up on cow-calf farm. Went to Eastern Kentucky and got a bachelor's there. And then actually went and did dairy stuff up in Michigan for a few years, and COVID hit. And it was probably one of the best things for my Agri-King career. I was able to start rolling in some beef nutrition, and then long story short, the opportunity came up to move back home, and so me and my wife moved back home to Kentucky, and now we just go wherever Agri-King will let us and feed beef cattle. So most of my business is in Kentucky, Michigan, and Iowa. I'd have some business in Tennessee, and I kind of go wherever the leads take me, to be honest with you.
And we appreciate that. And I know your producers that you work with appreciate the ability for you to show up and help them out. To start out with, give me a little bit of insight. The prices we're seeing on beef right now, whether it's for buying calves or for what they're selling, are off the charts, maybe historic highs. What has gotten us to this point on those prices being so outrageous?
Well, I think there's a couple different things. Number one is sheer inventory. I mean, we're the lowest cow numbers that we've been, and I can't quote the year, but since the early 50s. And then there's not really any sign of it coming back yet. So that's why the prices are where they are. The thing that's our saving grace is thanks to the dairy guys. I mean, really is the beef on dairy. And I think the beef industry is their saving grace as well, with calves what they cost. That's one of the reasons. I think it's as high as it is. The other reason is sheer quality. I mean, there's nobody in the world that is making the quality beef that we are making right now, and it's actually getting better. One, because of genetics, but two, just because of days on feed. the price of these cattle are so high that to actually make it pencil out, they have to be 200 pounds bigger than they did a few years ago. So instead of that average being, a 1,350, 1,400 pound steer, now these cattle have to be 1,600, 1,650 to make money, because the break even is at a 1,550 body weight. So on a break even, so pounds pay and feed is cheap. Sometimes it's not that way, but right now it is. And that has been, and that is another driving factor for the price of where it's at. Quality's there and quantity is not there. So both of those together, your consumers are still willing to pay for this quality beef that is being made right now. If we run into the issue where the quality is not there or the price goes up much more, I don't know what that looks like. I think that could be a problem, because we're at the point right now, not to get into politics or anything like that, but gas is fairly high. So there's a limit where people are going to leave buying beef at the grocery store to buy something cheaper, because they have to be able to get to work. Some people, that's not a problem. They want a steak, they go buy a steak. But in the grand scheme of things, the percentage of people that they have to make that decision is a lot higher than the people that it doesn't matter.
You mentioned that the cow herd is at historic lows. What's brought us to that point that herd has dropped in size to where it is?
Yeah. There's a lot of points to each thing. So again, there's a couple different reasons. One, you can talk about drought. Weather's probably the number one reason why. When there's no feed, no grass, no hay, the cows got to be sold. And a lot of those cows just go to a kill, and they get knocked, and it's not like they're moving from, say, Oklahoma and they're moving them to where grass is. No, those producers, a big majority of those cattle are getting sold, and they're going and not coming back anywhere. They're done. So when you lose such a large number, you can't build those back. So that's the number one. I'll say number one reason is probably drought related. And then the other thing related to that is, I know, for example, in Florida, like I talked to some producers down there, and big guys, they come in and say, hey, we're going to give you X amount of dollars, whatever that dollar figure is. They don't have the cows because they've been in a drought, or they sold the cows, or we're down on numbers. Okay, let's sell this land that we've had forever. We bought it for, say, numbers, I'm just throwing numbers out, they're not accurate, but say $2,000 an acre a long time ago, and now you're getting $25,000 an acre, and you've got an 10,000 acre ranch. That's hard to say no to, So when it gets sold that way and it gets cut up, and even in Kentucky here, all these farms are getting sold and then getting cut up for 5 acre tracts, and they're getting sold for $8,000-9,000 an acre as a whole farm, and then they're getting sold as $25,000 to $30,000 an acre as a 5 acre tract. So when those turn into 5 acre tracts, cows are not going on them anymore. It's going to be a house and someone with their 2 horses or their 2 cows or a couple goats or alpacas. Those guys, they are moving from wherever they're moving from. The price of land is still cheaper, so they're doing that and then living the farm life, as you will, what they envision as being a farm life. And people that are in the industry don't look at it that way, right? We don't drive by and say, oh, look at that farm. They got 5 goats and 2 horses, but to them, they're farming. So, so that's what's happening locally for me. And then why it's not coming back is the price of cattle are there. It's hard to keep a heifer when you could sell her for $2,500 to $2,800 versus keeping her and turning her into a cow in over the 2-year cycle. Because from the time you decide to keep her and breed her, it's a whole nother year before she has a calf, right? 9 months. And then and then it's a whole nother year before she makes you any money. So from the time that calf is born, it's really like, it's a 3-year deal before she makes you money. So you could get rid of her and make your $2,800 right now and not have to take a chance on A, the market's dropping, or B, something happens and she gets sick and dies or gets hurt or anything like that. So right now people are seeing the dollar signs currently and not for the future.
Well, that makes perfect sense. Do you see any trend to, someone's always first to make a change. There was somebody first. Well, you mentioned beef on dairy. We'll go back to that in a minute. But do you see any cow-calf producers who are starting to hang on to more heifers in anticipation of that longer investment paying off as the world needs them? Or is the immediate lure just going to be too strong for quite a while to have that long-range approach?
So again, this is kind of my opinion. My opinion is there's some of the bigger guys that are, I think you're seeing there's two different ways. I think the first is some of the smaller guys like myself that just have 30 cows. We can keep 10%. We keep 3 heifers back. It's not going to break us, but you're going to be able to not really grow, but maintain your herd size. And then you have some of the guys that are in that 800 plus range cows that they're keeping their heifers because they're going to take the chance on it, because they could sell those heifers for $2,800, but instead they're going to keep them. They're going to feed them. They're going to breed them, and they're going to sell them for $400 to $4,500. But they have to sit on them. But the amount of people that will spend $4,000 on a heifer that's, you buy her for $4,000 in November and you sell, and she's going to have a calf on the ground in February or March. That's a lot less risk. If you really think about it, yeah, it's $4,000, but it's a lot less risk than keeping her for $2,800 and something happening along the way. Plus, you can buy them from, you can buy good, reputable cattle from these bigger guys. Most of the guys that are selling heifers been doing it for a while, and they have good cattle, and name matters. So there's that. So I think it's like the middle guys are buying heifers ready to calve, and I feel like some of the smaller guys are just kind of keeping 2 or 10% back. And that's just what I see from the people that I talk to. I'm not talking about, I don't know what they're doing out in, cow country in Montana and Wyoming and that. I don't know what they're doing out there because I don't get in that area. But that's how I see it around here anyway.
Well, we've both mentioned the aspect of beef on dairy, and 10, 15, however many years ago, that was almost unheard of, and now it's the rare farm that doesn't. It's the rare dairy farm that doesn't do some aspect of that. What's your opinion? The impact on the industry. Are you having to feed those crosses a little differently? The size would be right there. What you talked about getting up towards 1,600 pounds, but what's your take on what's made that so important, and what are some of the things that you do a little differently when you've got a lot full of beef on dairy crosses?
Despite what people think on the feeding them, I don't feed them on my top diet any different than I do anything else. I'm going to start them differently because more than likely they're coming off of a corn pellet deal. So they are used to having more energy and more starch in their rumen versus a normal beef calf, or we'll just call them a native calf that is coming off grass or coming off the cow that's never seen anything but cow and grass. So you have to start them differently for sure. But as to end requirements, my energy levels, starch level, protein level, it's all the same. Like I don't feed, you can have pin 4 and pin 5, and they can be the crossbreds or they can be natives, and put them on the same load and drop the same diet to them both. They're going to be fine. that's how I handled on the big end. As to performance wise, typically they're going to be a little bit behind, but a lot of times they're pretty bulletproof. And when I say bulletproof, they're not having any problems. I mean, they come in, the ones that are sick and aren't going to make it have already not made it there, if you know what I'm saying. And so they're not there. So you don't have to worry about that. The other part of it is they've been on feed. They've been used to coming to the bunk. They've been with the same group. There's a whole lot of that stuff. They've probably not been through a sale barn or a couple sale barns. They've been on a good vaccine protocol. They had good colostrum. A lot of these bigger dairies, I mean, those calves get the same thing all the time. It doesn't matter if they're a steer or a heifer. When they hit the ground, those guys have a protocol and they get it. So their cows, their heifers that are being born on a big dairy are getting treated the best they can treat them, right? Those heifers, because they're hoping that they're going to become in their cow herd, right? In their dairy herd.
Mhm.
Well, the steers are getting the same thing, so they're getting treated just as good as anything else. So usually they've got a good source of colostrum, good vaccine program started, and so they just make good cattle. Now you can dive into which bulls do better, because there is difference in bulls, and we see difference in producers, like where these cattle come from. I had a guy that did some, they just absolutely rock and rolled and blew the doors off of it with performance. I'm not gonna give any numbers because I don't want people to think, well, that guy said my guy did this. So they just did really well. I'll leave it at that. And then I have some that come in, same feed, same barn even, and they don't, I mean, like everything is the same. They came from different spots and they are quite a bit behind on performance. So there's a difference in whether that was a difference in semen or where they got started, or, where they came from. That I don't know, but I know there is a difference in them, even though they're as similar to pigs in the beef industry as you can get. I mean, it's most of them, there's not very many bulls being used, and anymore, I mean, the cows aren't, there's genetic differences, but they're not as near as genetically diverse as the beef herd is. I mean, we have how many different breeds. So
Do you see any selection taking place of a bull that is primarily going to be used on native cows compared to a bull who's going to go into a dairy or beef on dairy situation?
yeah, those guys have, I mean, there's, like I said, there's 3 or 4 bulls that are good. And it's all genetic thing. I mean, I think, ABS, like sires, and you can get into that. I'm not much of the genetics guy and names, but I know there's not, it's not like they open up the beef catalog when this dairy is looking. They don't open up the beef catalog and be like, I'm going to scroll through until I find the one that I visually like the best. No, they've got, what are you doing? Okay, you're breeding dairy. We've got these 2 bulls and this is what they cost. Those are your options. So it's not like the producer sitting and then, you have producer A and producer B, and one of them's using one bull and one of them's using a different bull that aren't even in the same, on the same level. They're probably using the same, or if not, there's only 2. It's not like they're switching it up much.
You work across such a wide area. What are some of the differences you see between a Kentucky or a Southeast finishing operation and the ones you work with in Iowa?
So there's not a huge amount of finishing operations in Kentucky, just because there's a few different things. Corn is not number one. I mean, we grow decent corn, but we don't grow Iowa. And then we don't have any major kill floors that are close, like super close, versus in most of my clients in Iowa, they have probably 4 different options within 90 miles of their operation, any which direction, versus in Kentucky, I think there's one in Missouri, and that one be, depending on where they're at, 6 to 8 hours, and then the other, they may go to Pennsylvania, which is 8 to 12 hours, depending on where you're located in the state. So we don't have a huge amount of those, and the ones we do are usually, they're smaller and they're more of what we would call calf feds. They're coming off their cows, they're weaning them, and they're finishing them, and they're buying enough to make a couple loads. They may only have 50 cows. So you're going to keep your heifers. So you're going to have like 1.5 loads of fat. So you're going to buy another half a load. Typically is 33 to 36 head on a semi load. So they might only have 40 to sell. So they might buy an extra 25 to fit in their group, if that makes sense. Versus out west, and I call it out west, it's kind of probably not really out west, but Iowa area, those guys are buying, they're buying pot loads at a time. And they're shipping cattle, if not weekly, every other week, a load or two, or a pen is going out. Depends on their barn situation. And so the feeding operation is just, they're set up for it. They're bigger operations. They're set up to handle semis. They're set up to handle that. And Kentucky, we don't have a huge amount of that. There's a large amount of farms that it's tight to get a semi in, and versus Iowa, I think everywhere you can pull a semi in.
How does your work, does Michigan just exist as a very slight variation on Iowa because it's sort of the Midwest, or is Michigan a third consideration?
I think it's a third consideration for me because, 90% of my business there is Holsteins or beef on dairy cross, versus in Iowa, I don't have any Holsteins. I have some beef on dairies, but most of them are natives or beef on dairies. and then in Kentucky, I've got some beef on dairies and natives, but I don't have any Holsteins right now. So it's a different, as bad as this may sound, Michigan is kind of an easy deal because we're feeding 2 to 3 diets, and most of the time those cattle there, they almost get to see 2 birthdays. By the time they're there, typically we're hoping they're going out by like 22 months. 20 months, they're doing really well from calf to that. Just they grow so much slower, and getting them as big as we're getting them now. They typically are just there a long time. So there's not a lot of changes going on. If I go there, I try to go every 4 to 6 weeks to see my guys there, and cattle, nothing really changes. Yeah, they're bigger, but they've been on the same diet for how long? One of my biggest clients, we feed 2 diets, and they come in at 4-weight crossbreds or Holsteins, and we feed them from 400 pounds to 900 pounds, and then that 900 pounds to finish, they go on another diet, and that's just what we do, and it works really well for the way they're set up. And but most of them also farm too. That's the other difference that I forgot to mention was Kentucky. A lot of the guys here, they don't farm full time. They have a day job that pays the bills when the beef industry isn't great, and then they've got cattle because they wanted to. They've had the land, and they like a little bit of extra money. Right now it pays. Doesn't always pay, but right now it's paying pretty well. Versus Iowa and Michigan, those guys, they got cattle, they farm. Majority of them, they farm. They have some land and the equipment to do it. They're not just raising cattle.
I don't want to get into the nuts and bolts of nutrition. That's almost too personal to the farm. You said that your finish ration, your top end ration, stays pretty consistent, and that right now relatively low feed prices compared to the price of finished cattle is advantageous for a beef producer. What are some of the things that you Do you see much variation at all? You said they're very similar, but how are people feeding any differently with these really high prices for finished animals and the quality you spoke to?
Yeah, I think the biggest difference is we're just trying to get intakes. I mean, you got to get cattle to eat big early on, otherwise they will not be able to perform those numbers and hold those numbers, because the bigger the cattle get, the more feed they need, more maintenance requirements they have. Okay. So therefore, the bigger they get, the lower performance gets, because their body, they're eating 25 pounds on a dry matter. So they're eating 25 pounds on dry matter. Well, a percentage of that goes to maintain their body weight. And then the rest, whatever isn't used for maintenance, goes into performance. Well, they can only eat so much. So as they get bigger, their intake still stays the same. So therefore performance starts to come down. So we have to get those numbers as big as we can. And how are we doing that? Better quality cattle quality definitely makes the difference, but I think it's some of how I start them, trying to get them to eat big early before you get them on before you get them on that top diet, trying to get those intakes up there. So, and then hoping that you have everything balanced right, that when they switch, their intakes don't drop, because they're going to eat to an energy level. So you have to try to, if you have them on say a grower diet, and let's say it's just a 55 NEG, well, you have them on a 55, well, they may eat 36 pounds of dry matter. And then when you switch them to your finisher, let's say that's a 64 NEG. When you switch them to that, they're probably not going to eat. They're not going to eat the same 34 pounds of dry matter, because they don't have to eat as many pounds to get the same amount of energy, right? So if you can, you're almost always going to get an intake decrease when you go up to a higher level. That is the key to how well are your cattle going to perform, if you can keep those intakes higher. And all that's about timing. And my timing, I can always make recommendations to people, but it takes really good bunk readers to make the difference. And you can see that the guys that are doing the best on farm, like reading the bunks, reading the cattle, their intakes are always better. They are, and they always have less of a fall when they hit that top diet. And then the other thing is, the biggest problem that we're having now is when cattle are done, they'll tell you they're done just by intakes. Their intakes really, like I have a group right now, they've been hammering at 28 to 29 pounds of dry matter. They needed to get sold 4 weeks ago, and he's just waiting on a price. Pounds pay is what he keeps saying. Well, their intakes were at 28 pounds. And for the last 4 weeks, they keep going down. Now they're down to like 23, 24 pounds. They're done. They're not growing any, because it's taken most of that to just keep the maintenance level of that animal. And then now you're starting to get into heat and this and that. So I keep pushing them to get those gone. That's just one story.
So we're halfway through 2026. What are 3 things, if you were to sit down with a bunch of producers, what are 3 things, or whatever your list wants to be, but at least 3 things that you feel right now are absolutely vital to being profitable in the beef business?
I think making sure all your I's are dotted and T's are crossed. So it's the simple things. Making sure your feed quality is good. We're coming into not much longer feed, and some feed is already being harvested, some haylage and small grains and that kind of stuff. But doing your best to make sure your feed quality is good, because that goes into, you're going to feed that for the next year, right? So whether that's, and I'm not saying we have to treat it all. Yes, we want to treat it all with Agri-King, of course, but I'm not saying you have to treat it all. I'm just saying pack it good and cover it. Get it in the bunk, and that's a start. There's a lot of people that don't even do that. They just kind of half-ass pack it, and And then if they cover it when they get to it, okay. That's one of the easiest things. You're already putting feed in the bunk. If you're putting feed in the bunk, just do a better job at it. It doesn't cost you much anymore to do a better job. And so let's do that. That's, I think, probably one of the biggest things that you can do. I think quality of cattle, I mean, and that's going to be tough. There's going to be a lot of poor quality cattle fed on a lot of these farms just because of the cost of them. Some of these higher quality cattle, yeah, they're going to perform better, but are they going to perform good enough to make up for what they cost? I don't know. Probably not. So I think there's going to be a lot more mediocre cattle being fed just because they want to keep their pens full. And instead of cattle getting a 3.5 or 3.8 average daily gain, we're going to have cattle that are doing a 3.3 to 3.5 average daily gain. But if they make more money, who cares? But for me, and now I'm getting a little selfish here, for me, those suck because it looks back on, man, these cattle didn't perform as well. So we're always trying to reel these guys back in. Yeah, they didn't perform as well, but they're not the quality cattle we were feeding a year ago, because those quality cattle, you were in the red, and these quality cattle, you barely made it in the green with the price now. So, so I think that's something that you're going to see. And then a third thing, I don't know. I think it's hard to narrow down what a third thing that we're going to see and what we can do. I think every operation is different. And what I pride myself is going there and trying to find what can we do that doesn't cost us any money, but it's going to make us money. And there's always stuff you can find to do that's cheap, but pays big.
I think it's one of the things is it's both a good thing and a challenging thing. Farmers can be so competitive. Whose corn is tallest? Who's got things off early? Who planted first? And sometimes trying to drive home that point that, it's more important to be profitable than have the absolute best animals or best results that can be kind of hard to get people to swallow their pride on. That, okay, we're in this to make money, not just make beef.
Yeah, I mean, and there's a lot of that too. I think you're going to see a lot of heifers on feed too, and that's something that I got to try to tell these guys. Well, so and so down the road is getting, he just sold a load that did whatever performance, did a 3.7. Yeah, he's feeding good quality steers. He's not feeding these heifers that you're trying to overfeed, because they're trying to overfeed them, and heifers are worse about overfeeding than steers. Heifers will just flat stop performing. I mean, they'll just plateau. And, so there's a lot of that comes into when I hear people, and I'm just not going to say within Agri-King, but other people talk about how they're struggling, like, oh, so-and-so is not happy with the cattle performance. Okay. So most of the time it's not the diet that's in front of them, because we've done our job and got that diet in front of them on paper anyway. So are they mixing it right? Probably doing a pretty good job. There's so many different feeding softwares that make it where most guys do a pretty good job getting the right ration in front of them. So then you got to dig into a little bit more. What kind of cattle are they feeding? What's their bunk management like? What's their pen management like? There's all this other kind of stuff. And if you have zero control, you have zero control over that. So all you can do is tell these guys, hey, these cattle are performing because they're walking through, 3 foot of sludge in their pen. That's going to eat a 1/4 pound a day right there. And then when they're doing that, they're probably going to eat less pounds of feed. So now you got a double whammy. They're burning more energy just to stay alive. And then they're not going to eat as much because they don't want to fight walking through that. So, bam, there's 2 right there that you've lost half a pound a day. Well, your other guy, you go look at him, his pens are nice and his intakes are big. That's why, there's almost always a reason. And there's sometimes where you just didn't hit a home run. I mean, you struck out, and it is whether it's you bought a bad load of cattle, the weather killed you on starting those cattle, whatever that may be, you can't win every single time. So in the beef industry, it's an average. You're going to win, and you hope your average is always better than your loss, right? I mean, you got to keep your win column high, and you're going to have some losses. But if you think you're not having any losses, or you haven't had any losses, and you're watching this, hold on, because you're about to have one. That's just the nature of the beast, is the way it is. I can't help it. So
grab your crystal ball for a minute before I let you go. What is something that you're paying attention to maybe in the next 5 years? What's a trend you see developing? What's a practice you think is going to become more common? Maybe it's something you think will become less common, but just nobody's ever going to go back and hold your feet to the fire on this. But as we sit here today, what are your thoughts over the coming years?
I think using other products like Experior is one by Elanco that is just taking the markets by wildfire, and it's helping with yields and and they came out with it to help with emissions, and then to be honest, I don't know if they thought they would have the results that they're having, but I think there's going to be a lot of stuff like that, and figuring out what's just foo-foo dust and what actually works is going to be, it's going to be a big thing, and that's going to take these guys to the next level. And then I don't really know. I mean, you want to say, everybody always wants to talk about the markets, but I think right now we're kind of in a interesting spot on the cattle markets on where we're going to go, because cattle numbers aren't there. Cattle numbers are not going to be there, at least in the foreseeable future. But at what point is the price going to come down just because of the price of pound of ground beef in the grocery store? You know, oh, so I don't know that there's anything. I don't know that I can say, oh yeah, this is what's going to happen, because I don't really even know what's going to happen. I think cattle numbers are going to probably kind of maintain there, and I think cattle prices are going to come down. That's what I do think. I think the price of cattle will come down just because, I mean, we're going to get more exports or imports, and we're not exporting as much. And there's just that part of politics that is a big question mark as well. No matter what side of the fence you're on, you're not going to be happy one way or the other. And we just got to ride this wave and see what happens, because whatever gets done now is going to get changed in the next couple of years, just because it's how it is. So I think my biggest thing to people is, I would say, don't base your operation on 8 weights bringing 350 plus. I wouldn't base my operation on a calf bringing $2,800 to $3,200, because that's how you're going to go broke. It's just not going to happen, because I don't think we'll be there forever. I could be totally wrong, and in 3 years we look back and be like, oh look, we're still selling. In 5 years, oh look, we're still selling 3,000 plus 8 weight steers. I don't think we will be. I just don't think the grocery store, the consumers, can handle that forever. So I think you're going to have some of that. You're going to have a lot of people that do get over leveraged because they've been making this much money and they're buying new equipment. Trust me, I'd love to have new equipment too, but I don't think it makes, long term, I don't think that's where you should go. I think you need to put your money in something that's going to make you more money, such as, buying better quality cattle and not just buying any piece of junk cow that comes through the sale ring. So I don't know if that kind of answered your question, kind of maybe rolled it around a little bit.
No, that was exactly the kind of information I was looking for. Now we're going to finish with the big question of the day, and you put your thinking cap on for this one. So I'm coming over to the house of Radcliff tonight for dinner. Tell me what cut of beef you're going to serve to me and how you're going to prepare it.
if you come over here, you're gonna get a ribeye, you're gonna get a medium rare, and you're gonna get it done on the smoker with a hot sear at the end. So that's what you're gonna get if you're getting beef. I think there's a lot of beef. Actually, if we're talking that, one of my favorite cuts, I love a flank steak, and then if you get like beef ribs, you get them what they call flanken style, where you have the 3 little riblets. They cut them, your bones run this way, and they cut them this way. I think those are as flavorful as any cut on the cow, but nobody knows how to cook them or knows that's really even an option. So ribeye is always the number one, and people that like filet, it's just because they haven't had a good ribeye. Filet doesn't have much flavor; it's just tender. Okay.
But it sounds like maybe Chris, maybe we really fanned on this whole podcast. Maybe part 2 needs to be cooking with Trevor.
And there we go.
Oh, I love that idea. I can be down with that.
That's fine. I mean, we cook a lot of beef. We cook a lot of pork. I like to eat, and then everybody knows that I'm a halfway decent cook. So actually, Saturday I'm smoking some pork, make pulled pork for my nephew's birthday. So we're always throwing something on the grill.
Well, perfect. Well, Trevor, thank you so much for taking time to be with us today. I appreciate it very, very much. Besides the menu suggestions, Chris, what did you learn today?
My big takeaway is Trevor believes that high prices are attributed to low inventory, better quality, and Trevor believes that COVID was a blessing to him, which I love it. Just looking at things differently. Thank you so much. If you're listening to us, whatever you're listening on, please leave us a review. And you can find us on just about any socials or any of the listening apps. You can also email us at podcast@agriking.com if you'd like to hear us talk about something else. And Mike and Trevor, thank you very much. Have a great day.
Thank you, guys.